Welcome back to Teacher's Best Friend, where we share practical ideas to make teaching more fun and effective. My name is Ken Scheel. I'm the founder of Kiva Planks, and today I'm wrapping up my interview with Dr. Donna Hoskins, an expert in child development, as we talk about practical ways to engage in meaningful conversations with young children. Saying good job falls way short of what we could be doing. Let's learn a better way. We'll go ahead and return to our conversation now. This is a form of the Socratic method of teaching, which I always, when I've tried that, I find it to be so time consuming. And it's when you say you have these critical marks, critical things that you are wanting to accomplish to get them ready. And so I think some teachers they want to check off those boxes, and they've officially done an activity that in theory does this. And they can do it quicker if they are speaking to everyone at one time and being more directive. And the idea of asking questions and having conversations that are so disjointed and can go in any direction, it seems like that can feel like, what did we accomplish today? Because it took an hour to do that, and I'm not sure what boxes I checked off with being able to check off the things that you wanted to do to officially show that you're working towards these goals. And so the things you're describing sound like they're nonlinear, they're not efficient as far as being able to mark off those things, but in the long term, they are the most effective. So I don't know if you can speak into any of those comments.
A lot of early childhood books that talk about these are the 5 skills, or these are the 7 skills that your child needs to be successful as an adult. And I think we have to think about that. How do I teach those skills? And you wouldn't see it in a traditional curriculum. Mm-hmm. And so you can still teach the curriculum through this approach. And it's interesting. I've been in many classrooms, and one time, I think of an example here, I took in little sugar cubes, and they were supposed to I said, just make an igloo. And the teacher said, they don't know what an igloo is. We have to pull up a picture, and they need to make it like this. I said, don't pull up a picture. We can tell them what an igloo is as we do it. We don't have to show them a picture and their igloos look just like this, because we're using sugar cubes. We're not even out in the snow. It's not even snowing. So it's that conformity of, this is what an igloo is and this is what you need to build. It's that conformity that is not necessarily a good thing. I like to throw some materials out there and see what they come up with. And that's that creativity that we're developing in children. And that's a part of that cognitive development. So we have to think about the ways we approach the use of materials. You can give them several examples, or you can build yours and model something to them while they're building, but it doesn't have to be a set way, or look like, your coloring sheet, or you have to do it a certain way. I was in a classroom last week, and the teacher said, she did not tell you to do that. Well, that's conformity. That's not creativity. They can do whatever they want. I hope that the finished product, everybody's looks different. And so we are so stuck in early childhood by saying, here is a craft. The eyes go here, the feathers go here, and now please glue that right there. Now, if you don't glue it right, I'll do it for you. Those packaged crafts, I do like them, but they can look any way. They can use those materials any way they want. I have to think about my little boy. So he's 5. And when he was he went to a camp, and every day they would say, here, this is supposed to be a bird, but here's what he created. And I was like, yes. It looked nothing like a bird, because it's that creativity. And they were just like, okay. And so, but that's child development, is that those original ideas and concepts and not making it look like everyone else's.
So that's it. The thing that I hear you describing, particularly like the with the igloo situation, is a mindset of play, of play based learning. And it sounds like you are, when you come in and you're doing these things, you are starting with that playful mindset that this will be fun to build an igloo with these things. And and if you combine that with creative based learning, where you get to think of however you're going to build the igloo, that is fun and playful. If you are looking at an official igloo and feeling like I need to be able to do this just like this, that's more of a job, and you kind of have pressure. You don't have the human pleasure of creating something. You're just following directions, and that is not fun. It may be enjoyable to some degree, but the playful mindset and the creativity that you're putting together, uh, that is where the power is, and that's the language of kids. They understand play, and so if you're coming in from that angle, you can get them on your side right away, and then it sounds like once you do that, then you can talk about whatever else you want to talk about with igloos, rather than starting with here's an official picture of an igloo and now we were all build one.
Right. And so it's letting them come up with something that, and I will say, you develop an igloo that we have never seen before. And so it's that's that Bloom's taxonomy, that's the create.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're asking all the middle parts of Bloom's taxonomy. Well, let's evaluate, let's analyze, okay, you're asking all those questions to make them do that. Like maybe I give you some tape to tape the sugar cubes together. Maybe I put out some glue and you saturate the little sugar cubes in glue. Maybe I put some bowls out so you can build it up on a structure, right? And so some of them just stack them. Some of them use the bowls to make it more like a typical igloo. And so that's those are the things that you have to be. Um, I guess there's more traditional ways of doing it. Here's an
Mm-hmm.
igloo, and now let's move forward. And that yours needs to look like this versus applying that Bloom's taxonomy and saying create something that we've never seen before. Um, and that's equipping them with more skills, and that's enhancing cognitive development when they're challenged or stimulated through the material.
And if you started with the picture of the igloo, then I think you find yourself in the position of evaluating everybody's igloo and saying, and thinking, at least thinking, this does not look like the picture. What can we do to make it look more like the picture? So it puts you much more in a corrective mode to be able to be going around and dealing with those students who didn't make it, just like the picture. And I think maybe for particularly for students who are struggling a little bit, they realize that they made it wrong, they didn't do it right, they needed the teacher's help to get it there. I must not be a good igloo maker. And um, and so you kind of build that in. If you've because you've essentially created, this is the answer. The closer yours looks to this igloo, the better you've done. And so you kind of create uh, sort of the opposite of what you're trying to do, as they're trying to learn, because they learn the physics of blocks and how to make an igloo, and why they are uh, why you could make a sugar cube wall. If you're going straight up, that would be much easier than if you're trying to stack those and make that so you have a roof over you. That's a lot harder, and you have to make that wall and have it fall a few times before you deal with that.
And
And
I know in early childhood they say it's about the process, not the product. But so often I see they set them up for this is what we need to look like. And so the process is lost right there. And so we know what works as far as cognitive development and how we do that, and that kids are active learners. But what we're saying and and doing, our actions don't match that. And
yeah,
so it's well established in the research. And so, my goal in my research project is how do we coach teachers? How do we help them get there? Because it seems like there is a disconnect. We know what we need to do. Now, how do we get there?
Yeah, and we see that so much up and down the line of education uh, with the even with robotic competitions, that sort of thing, and in the higher level where they're kind of following the recipe to build you. This is what you do to build this sort of robot that will do that, rather than um, a more inventive, creative side of that. I wanted to explore something you said earlier about the uh, about just putting the materials out and letting them go, and sort of the two ends of that. With one is totally open-ended play where there's no direction at all, and the other is what we've been talking about with lots of prescriptive directions. And so those seem like the two opposites, and you're advocating for something in the middle. So I don't know whether you can speak to uh, sort of the pros and cons, or the shortcomings of the totally open-ended, because there's certainly a place for totally open-ended play, and there is a place where you actually have to teach them very specific skills and tell them some things. But I don't know if you can talk about those opposite ends of the spectrum.
So you're talking about like providing materials and, how much talking or how much direction should you give? Um, and I mean, I think it depends on what you're doing and what your objectives are. Um, but, I tell the teachers, just start with 20 minutes. Um, Adults need to be connected with the kids in the room, just having conversations. It doesn't even have to be about the materials.
Hmm.
I mean, you can just have conversations with them. Maybe it's more of a socio-emotional focus. Wow, you were really upset when your structure fell down. Oh, how could we be problem solvers? And so that's walking them through the socio-emotional piece of it. And so it doesn't have to be all talk about the materials. Why did you build it that way? How did you build it that way? How could you build a more stable structure? It could be, okay, let me talk about your emotions. As you build this, let me highlight, let me identify oh, you seem frustrated. You seem frustrated because you went like this, or you slammed the blocks down. And so maybe, we're talking about socio-emotional, but I do think that there has to be ongoing communication always, to really engage in rich discourse with the children. You don't have to have material to do that. I mean, think about going out with a friend for coffee. You don't bring all these materials or a game to play. You just talk, and you have this serve and return, back and forth conversation. And you may do that for an hour and a half. That's what I want to see happening in early childhood centers. And so moving from having, this management talk and teacher centered, and I'm in control and you're going to do what I ask you to do, to more collaborative, I guess, environment. And think about how can I, get 2 or 3 kids around me at once and have these small learning groups, and give them that rich discourse, or allow or provide opportunities for rich discourse to happen. I think you do set yourself up for that, by how you structure your classroom, and how, the questions on the walls, like how do you ground yourself? I wonder what would happen if ... on the wall. And so I see it in children's museums when I visit those. It's those question starters,
Mm-hmm.
that we have. And so it could be with material, it could be with a socio-emotional focus. And so there are different ways to go about this.
Well, I like your idea of thinking of it, of trying to do it for just 20 minutes. And because so many of us, we have our established habits of the way we interact, the things that we say, of me saying good job, and knowing as it's coming out of my mouth that I should be saying something more specific. But it's so hard for us to break those habits. But if we think, I don't have to do this for the entire day or the entire morning, I'm going to put the blocks out and remind myself of these questions and really work on that for 20 minutes. And then I can fall back into my habits if I have to, or maybe there'll be no totally open-ended play and I won't be doing that so much. But but really concentrating on a short amount of time until that starts to become easier. And once that's starting to become easier, then that hopefully that'll stretch into basically all of your time where you'll be doing that, and it just becomes the habit. But I like the idea of breaking it into something that's not overwhelming and not expecting yourself to make this huge transition if you've got years and years of sort of prescriptive habits, which apparently only 15% of people really have the habits you're talking about. There's a lot of really good preschool teachers who are just love their children, are doing just a wonderful job, and they have these habits that could be changed and do an even more wonderful job if they can start implementing some of these things that you're talking about. I wanted to visit, just hear some of the research books that you've read, some of the things that have influenced sort of your thinking and your why you've decided to concentrate your research in this area. If you could share any of those resources that have impacted your thinking on these things.
Okay, sure. I can share some books. I mean, of course, my work in a lab teaching college students how to do this work has influenced a lot of my thinking because I see what works, and we start the first day out as let me teach you how to talk to children, and they all well, we know how to do that. Anybody can talk to a child,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't need to learn how to talk to children. And I'm like, okay, do you know how to talk to children or have conversations with children in a way to have them think out loud? Oh, well, that takes it to a different level, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so all of these preschool teachers, oh, they know how to talk to children. And I mean, they do have the warm, fuzzy interactions. Oh, sweetie. Oh, honey. They have all that. Lots of warm environments out there. I mean, I've been in lots of classrooms this semester
Mm-hmm.
in the community, and wow, they love those kids. High warmth. But we're talking about the instructional support dimension here and cognitive development. And while all of it's important, it's just this is the hardest one because of intentionality. And so here are some research books or researchers that I've read their work. The Great Disconnect, in early childhood education, what we know versus what we do. And so that's a good one. You can tell I use these a lot because I have sticky notes
Mm-hmm.
everywhere. This is the one we use in our child development lab at Bridgewater. Big questions for young minds, extending children's thinking. And so it's extending their thinking, getting them to think out loud for a long period of time,
Mm.
not just a one word response back. And so this book, I mean, it even mentions Kiva Planks in it. And so this
All
is by
right.
it does. I found it in the science section, actually. So they have it by subject. And so this is published by NACE, so the National Association of Education on Young Children. And so that's a great organization that has great research. And then also the research that came out of University of Virginia. It's the class system that for pre-K, these are University of Virginia researchers. This has some good information on examples of low, medium, and high levels of instructional support that you observe in classrooms. There are, several other like Vygotsky's research, Piaget's research. I mean, the Head Start research. I mean, all that goes, 50 years back, and that grounds the way we think about children and cognitive development research as well. But those are some of the newer books that I have been enjoying.
All right, excellent. Well, with this podcast, our title is sharing ideas that make teaching more fun and effective, and it strikes me that the things that you're talking about, uh, one is that having these real life conversations with children, I think it makes the day of a preschool teacher more, it will make the day go faster and be more interesting because you're having genuine conversations. And I think it changes the young children into little people. You learn so much more about them and their personalities and the way they communicate that I think it makes the day more fun and more genuine for the teacher. And as we talked about earlier, it makes your teaching actually more effective with the long-term impact on them and their enjoyment of being at school and having that playful mindset. So it's accomplishing so much with these simple. Well, they seem simple, and there's really it seems like a limited number of facilitating questions that you really need to start with. Um, could you maybe just to help us summarize, um, maybe give us, I don't know, 3 to 5 of the top go-to questions if a teacher is trying to shift towards this, and maybe these are the top 3 things that they post around the room to remind themselves. But what are I think you've shared them already, but if we just kind of recap on maybe 3 to 5 questions to keep on the top of our mind to try to shift into this new habit.
So I would say that, you want to think about the C words. You want to make those connections for them. You want to have conversations with them. Um, and you want critical thinking. So we have to think about the C words,
Mm-hmm.
right? I also think the ABC approach, add a word, repeat it back, have a conversation. That can be a nice framework for us to think about these things. And then to answer your question, the specific questions would be, I wonder what would happen if. How could we use this material in a different way? Or how could you build this to fit a bigger Lego man? Why do you think that happened? Why why did you place the material in that way? And so the why, the how, and also I think another tip, would be to label the kids. You are a problem solver because you did this.
Mm.
You labeling them, or you are an engineer because you are building something, redesigning it, recreating it. Let's sketch it out here on this little pad of paper. And so walking them through all that without stopping to ask, do you know what an engineer is? Do you know what blue is? Do you know what number this is?
Mm-hmm.
Because they're active learners. Why slow learning down? Let's do all this, and they will. It keeps them more engaged in the classroom. I think you said that. When you have these open-ended materials, it makes your job easier. And once you get in the habit of using these approaches, it becomes second nature. We just have to, and that's why I think the questions ground teachers. And as the semester goes on, I see teachers, it increases. They do more and more of it without
Mm.
even thinking about it. Do we get carried away with management talk? Yes, it's easy to do that. It's easy. I know the research, and it's easy for me to do that because they do need a lot of help.
Right.
Bathroom and noses, and don't do that to your friend, and socio-emotional help. And so you're working on developing the whole child. And that's what makes it hard. And I think that's where we lose our focus is the some behaviors take all the attention
Right.
sometimes of the teacher. And we just have to remember that, really we can teach a lot of things through the use of materials, and guide them in their exploration.
All right. Well, thank you. Anything else that you were thinking of talking about? It could be an entirely different area or just a concept that you've thought of now towards the end that maybe I didn't ask or anything else. And maybe you have something or may not. I just wanted to give you the opportunity if there's anything else or if you wanted to wrap up in any other way or
I,
this has been wonderful, by the way.
Thank you. I think a question we have to keep in mind is how to best guide the learner. And that's what we're all about. And how do we keep conversations going? And how do we provide rich discourse for these children? That's what it's all about. Um, and yes, we have to teach the content. Yes, we are teachers, but we're teaching so many more lifelong skills, that sometimes we forget about that. And you see we want to equal the playing field. We want to get all kids up to a certain level so they're ready, kindergarten ready, that kindergarten readiness. But if kids in poverty hear less words overall. And so it is our job as teachers, especially in these low income daycares, and they're here in this community. They're everywhere. We talk about kids in poverty; they hear less words, and so it's our
Yeah.
job as a teacher to make up for that. And I also want to add about technology. And so I've been in some schools that have big 55-inch screen TVs mounted at eye level with the children. We need to be careful with technology usage.
Mm.
Um, they do not learn language through television. There's been a lot of studies that have been done that talk about communication and the bidirectionality of a conversation that's live is much more powerful for language development than hearing it on a screen. And so I see a lot of teachers turning on little video clips. And yes, the kids will sit there, the kids will be like glued to the television screen. But I was at a conference and there was a researcher that said more kids will seem to have ADHD. They'll appear like they have ADHD, that hyperactivity, because they're glued to a screen. So when they get the screen taken away, what behaviors do we see then? And so there is some research that talks about that. And so technology in early childhood, we have to be very careful. And that's why I said I don't even really like toys that have batteries in them. And I know that's kind of a Montessori approach, but there is something to engage, having them be active learners. And TV is a lot of times passive. And I know there's like Dora the Explorer. There's some really cool, shows that PBS has developed. My 5-year-old uses technology, but so I'm not saying don't use it at all, but I'm saying be careful about how we use it. And in a public school setting or an early childhood setting, we need to let them hear the most amount of words that we can let them hear in a day's time. And because they're getting the technology at home. And so we have to keep that in mind as early childhood professionals or educators.
Well, this has been just so informative and so helpful. It strikes me that the things that you're advocating for really are quite simple and seem so doable with just some simple changes. It's not a huge curriculum that you need to learn. There's not a lot of questions. It's just shifting some habits, and then what a huge difference that makes as we get students, for especially preschool students and young children who are creating the foundation for how they're going to view school and their education for the rest of their lives, that you can really change the trajectory of their lives. That's one of the most powerful things of preschool teachers, that they get blank slates and get to kind of create how does this child view education. And so getting off on a great start with that, and also for teachers to be feeling like they're making a difference, feeling like it's fun to go to work, and they get to have all these little conversations with their children, and the day will go faster and be more effective and be more fun because they have genuine friendships and relationships with their young children, rather than feeling like they're a teacher and they have to have all of these things lined up. So I think what you're doing is the ripple effect for teachers' lives and the students that they are impacting. This is such an important thing that is so doable. So I appreciate you sharing these very practical ideas and pulling together so much research and making it so approachable and understandable for teachers to start to implement. So this has been super helpful, Donna. Thank you.
Thank you.
So that's it for today. I hope you've enjoyed this. I'm sure you have, and we'll see you next time. And thank you, Donna. Bye-bye.